The movie opens with a naked, blood soaked woman making love with corpses while talking about the beauty of death. The scene cuts to a cabin which is swarmed with flies and littered with dead animals. We then see the same woman from earlier, but she is now much older. She is a witch in the midst of a ritual. Elsewhere, we see a girl named Mickey playing the piano and savoring the final moments of her time at college before summer vacation begins. She chats with a worried friend who asks if it's back, but Mickey quickly dismisses the concern and insists she is perfectly fine. Afterward, the two promise to see each other again in a couple of months and say their goodbyes. Moments later, Mickey is picked up by her father, Jake, and the two drive off toward an unknown destination. Jake asks her what her friends think about what they're planning to do, but Mickey admits she hasn't told them anything. The scene then returns to Solveig, who is wandering through the woods. She comes across a dead deer whose carcass is crawling with flies, so she approaches the animal and begins chanting something. In another scene, Mickey and Jake arrive at a roadside dinner where he asks her now how she found the woman they're going to meet. But a visibly nervous Mickey says the woman reached out to her and doesn't reveal anything beyond that. That night, the father and daughter stay at a motel where they reminisce about Mickey's late mother and become emotional. Elsewhere in the forest, Solveig is seen standing motionless right when dozens of flies begin to pour from her mouth. Meanwhile, in the motel, Mickey jolts awake to see a bizarre piece of flesh smeared across the wall, only for it to vanish in a matter of seconds. The next morning, the father and daughter continue their journey into a remote area. On the way, Jake stops the car and asks his daughter if she is sure about this. The girl says yes and admits that it may sound like a scam, but she is willing to give it a shot. Jake worries about how they're going to pay this mysterious woman, and Mickey says they don't have to because it's all for free. Jake is deeply unsettled by this and says that nothing in life is free, so they must be very careful. After a while, the two finally arrive in front of an old cabin that looks like a treehouse where there is a large pile of stones nearby. They approach the cabin where they are greeted by none other than Solveig, who welcomes them. Once inside, Mickey notices a butterfly that appears to be dead, and Solveig states that it is just as beautiful as when it was alive. She then takes Mickey to her room, where there is a bed made entirely of moss, but Mickey seems excited by it. Solveig then takes Jake to his room, which is also equally bizarre. Jake also informs Solveig that he's just here to support his daughter and to pretend that evening will somehow work out. But Solveig reminds him that death is already growing inside Mickey and has given her meaning of life while it has stripped Jake of his fate. The scene then cuts to a flashback where we see a villager woman approaching Solveig and desperately asking for her help with a pregnant woman. It turns out the child was stillborn and the villagers sought Solveig's help even though they hated and feared her. Using a small twig, Solveig cut into the woman's stomach and pulled out the lifeless child. The mother survived and Solveig held the dead baby with an unsettling smile. This left a villager woman deeply disturbed, so she quickly snatched the tiny corpse away from the witch. In the present, we see Solveig leading Mickey into the woods and asking the young woman when she was first diagnosed with cancer. Mickey explains that she was just 15 and the doctors told her that her chances of surviving were 50-50. She eventually recovered, but the cancerous tumor has returned, and now the doctors have given her only 6 months to live, which is why she has come to seek Solveig's help. Later, the witch brings Mickey in front of an ancient tree with Jake following at a distance. Solveig places her hand near Mickey's belly and says that she cannot become a mother as her uterus has been removed, but she comforts the girl, saying that even though it is fruitless, a tree is still a tree. She then places a ring on Mickey's finger as a symbol of union, explaining that the two circles represent life and death. Next, Solveig raises her hands and begins chanting something before suddenly stopping and walking away. Witnessing this, Jake is deeply unnerved and suggests to his daughter that they should leave and find a good doctor for her condition. But Mickey refuses and places her full trust in the witch, who has promised she can cure her in just 3 days. Later at the cabin, Sovik offers the father and daughter some fruits and mushrooms to eat, and when they hesitate to say a blessing, she takes it upon herself. She begins chanting a prayer while piercing her finger with the twig, letting blood drip freely. When she finishes, Jake says Amen, which panics Solveig, so she demands that he undo what he said and spit the word onto the floor. A confused Jake does as he's told, after which he reluctantly eats the food. Suddenly, Solveig grabs a dead butterfly and eats it, shocking both Jake and Mickey. She then places her bloody hand in Mickey's and asks both father and daughter to close their eyes. But during this time, Mickey sees a terrifying vision in which Solveig's hands transform into the wrinkled hands of an old woman. Sometime later, Solveig is seen in the forest performing a ritual over a dead animal. Later that night, Mickey wakes up and unexpectedly begins wandering into the woods. But to her shock, she sees Solveig naked, covered in blood, and being intimate with something. But the horrifying scene turns out to be only a vision. In another flashback, we see Solveig observing the funeral of the stillborn baby whose mother she had helped. After the ceremony, everyone left, but Solveig suddenly approached the grave and began removing the pile of stones. She dug deeper and deeper until she uncovered the corpse of the baby, which she lifted with excitement before taking it away from there. Returning to the present, Solveig works through the forest and soon comes across a nest of snakes. She snatches one of their eggs and scrapes a strange substance from the bark of a nearby tree. Upon returning to her cabin, Solveig begins brewing a tea with the substance from earlier and offers it to Jake. He invites Mickey to drink as well, but Solveig suddenly says no, which scares Jake. He is very hesitant, but ends up drinking the tea in the end. After this, Solveig takes Mickey into the woods, during which the girl asks if she has dosed her father, but the witch calmly replies that she only helped him open his mind. Back in the cabin, we see Jake screaming in pain before he suddenly begins violently vomiting blood. The poor man's eyes are drawn outside, where he is horrified to see a glimpse of a woman's shriveled corpse. Elsewhere, Solveig draws a circle on some rocks beside the water and asks Mickey to lie down on them. The witch demands that she show where the tumor is, so Mickey shows her belly, saying that the tumor is the size of an apple. Solving that pours a little holy water over it and instructs Mickey to sink to the tumor as if it were a baby. Mickey complies, during which Solveig shockingly cuts and pours its contents onto the girl's belly. And then Mickey's stomach rips open in a gruesome wound, causing her to scream in unbearable pain. But Solveig calmly says that this is the way it should be. Sometime later, Solveig and Mickey return to the cabin, where they find Jake sitting in front of the pile of stones. He reveals how he's been vomiting all morning and wonders what was in that tea. He is worried for his daughter's well being, so Solveig asks Mickey to show her the progress. Mickey then reveals her wounds, which horrifies and deeply worries her father. Solveig calmly states that it's a good thing because now the tumor is wounded, but Jake doesn't believe her. And so Solveig insists that this is not so different from when they put Mickey through radiation and chemotherapy, which burned her from the inside. She explains that the cure is always painful, and even though Mickey understands, Jake remains skeptical. The scene then cut to another flashback where we see Solveig living with the baby she had managed to revive. Unfortunately, the mother of the child and the other villagers discovered what she had done and became furious. They thus attacked Solveig and snatched the revived baby away from her. In the present, Mickey asks her father what he will do if the cure doesn't work and she dies. He jokingly responds that he will kill himself as well. and follow her to the afterlife. Elsewhere, we see Sovik wearing a strange mask and crushing a bone in her hands until it turns into maggots. That night, Sovik offers the father and daughter some meat, claiming it is venison. She then goes off to her room, saying she needs to prepare for tomorrow's ritual. Once alone, Jake tells his daughter that he has noticed that Sovik never really eats, and no matter how much he eats, he always seems hungry. He also points out that there is no stove in the house or running water and wonders how the witch even cooked his meat. But Mickey remains trusting of the witch and says her only concern is getting well at the moment. She also shockingly reveals that Solvik reached out to her in a dream, and that is how she knew about this place. That night, Jake wakes up hearing strange noises outside, and when he checks, he finds a drunken couple throwing rocks at the tall pile of stones. Jake asks them to leave, but they tell him it's none of his business. When Jake warns them that is disrespectful to Solveig, the couple suddenly becomes terrified for some reason and drives away. The next morning, Solveig enters a cave in the forest where she comes across a snake. She lies down beside it, and in a bizarre turn of events, the snake begins to slither into her mouth. Later, she takes Mickey somewhere, and the girl asks if her dad is coming. Solveig says he needs a moment alone, and we see a scene of Jake who seems entranced, with maggots writhing in his open mouth. Meanwhile, Solveig tells Mickey that today is the third and final day, but it's going to be a long one. Mickey asks if the rituals are working, and Solveig assures her that she will live to grow old and eventually die. On the way, they also notice a deer that Solveig had revived days ago, and she smiles upon seeing it. Later, the two reach the entrance of the cave from before when Mickey asks the witch why she is helping her. Solveig reveals that they both hurt each other and cryptically says that Mickey's curse is her gift. Next, she asks Mickey to sit down before inserting a twig into her ear, causing Mickey to fall into a trance. And then Solveig then shockingly transfers a large snake from her own throat into Mickey's. After some time, they return home where Solveig goes to Jake's room and breaks him free from his trance. Later, Jake finds his daughter in a terrible and sick state, which worries him a lot. He states that Solveig is a fraud and that she's not going to cure her. Jake also says that he has been trying to be supportive, but he's reached his breaking point and demands that they go home. But Mickey refuses and tells her father he can leave if he wants, but she will not die because of him. Overwhelmed by desperation and pain, she begins screaming at him until he finally storms out of the woods. Later, Jake goes to a local diner to collect his thoughts while Mickey begins crying as the wound on her skin causes her unbearable pain. Suddenly, she has a terrifying vision of a dead person emerging from the ceiling, leaving her paralyzed with horror. At this point, Mickey wonders if her father was right, so she finally decides to run away from the house, which doesn't go unnoticed by Solveig. Elsewhere, Jake decides to stay at a local hotel where he speaks with a receptionist and reveals how he came to the town seeking a healer for his sick daughter. He asks if she knows Solvik, to which the woman says that Solvik is a necromancer who can trick death. In a shocking twist, she reveals that a couple of 100 years ago, Solvik brought a stillborn baby from the dead. But the villagers discovered this and burned the baby, assuming it to be evil. Afterward, they buried Solvik alive, and the poor woman screamed for her baby while being trapped in the dirt. It turns out her grave is the same place as the piles of stones where people throw rocks to prevent her from leaving. Upon hearing this, a horrified Jake asks who lives in that house in the woods, but the receptionist surprisingly reveals that there is no house in there. This fills Jake with panic and terror as he quickly leaves to save his daughter. Elsewhere, we see Mickey running through the woods and trying to escape the witch, while Solvik hovers eerily above her. Not long after, Mickey notices strange faces forming in the trees right when Sovik knocks her unconscious. Sovik then drags her and brings her to the piles of stones at her grave. Moments later, Mickey begins to wake up and Sovik tells her how she suffered for centuries without love, buried in the dirt, and constantly mocked by others. She explains that Mickey heard her screams from beneath the earth, which allowed the witch to finally rise again. Next, Sovik uses the twig to cut open Mickey's belly while the poor girl struggles with unbearable pain. The witch then plunges her hand inside and finally removes the cancerous tumor as Mickey screams uncontrollably. In a shocking turn of events, Sovik uses her dark magic to transform the tumor into a lifeless baby, which fills her with overwhelming joy and excitement. She thanks Mickey for giving her this while the poor girl passes out from blood loss. Sometime later, Jake finally returns to the house and finds his bloodied daughter passed out in front of the pile of stones. He quickly shakes her awake, but strangely, they notice that there is no wound on Mickey's bloodied body, leaving both of them stunned. We then see another flashback from many years ago where a helpless Sovik is seen watching as the baby was burned alive by his mother. Sovik was then pelted with stones by the cruel villagers who buried her alive, and in the present, Mickey and Jake dig up Sovik's grave, where they are horrified to discover the skeleton of a woman cradling the skeleton of an infant. In the final scene, Mickey and Jake visit a doctor who reveals that Mickey is completely free from cancer and shows no signs of chemical or radiation damage. The doctor says he cannot believe the results and offers to run more tests, but Mickey insists that no further tests are needed as the movie comes to an end. And just like that, the nightmare finally ends. The mysterious witch who had been buried for centuries finally got what she wanted a child, but in the process, Mickey's impossible miracle came true. The cancer that was supposed to kill her in 6 months simply vanished. And trust me, the next movie I'm covering is even darker than this one. Until then, stay curious, and I'll see you in the next movie recap.